The silence inside a restaurant like this had a texture to it, dense and layered, woven from the soft clink of heavy silverware on porcelain. The careful murmur of conversations kept deliberately low, and the quiet, suffocating pressure of wealth. So much wealth. Maya felt it pressing down on her the moment she slid into the booth, a physical force in the climate-controlled air. The burgundy dress she had spent 2 weeks agonizing over suddenly felt cheap, flimsy, apologetic against the velvet cushion beneath her. She smoothed it over her thighs for the 10th time, the gesture doing nothing for the frantic hammering inside her chest. This was a mistake. A catastrophic white tablecloth, 3-fork mistake. Her cousin Denny had called it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A friend of a friend needed a favor, a respectable dinner companion, for a very important, very private businessman in Chicago for the week. Danny had sold it the way she sold everything, effortless, breezy, irresistible. He's rich, Maya. Absurdly rich, and gorgeous apparently. Just show up, have a free meal. Be your charming self. Worst case, you eat well and go home. Seated now in this glacial immaculate dining room on Chicago's North Shore, Maya could count a dozen worst cases. Starting with the way the host had looked at her when she gave the reservation name, his gaze making a quiet inventory of her full figure, her dark brown skin, her carefully styled locks, before landing on something that looked unmistakably like pity. She was 25 years old. She taught 3rd grade at Bridgeport Elementary. Her world was colored pencils, chapter books, and the joy of watching a child's face unlock when something finally clicked. It was small and warm and completely hers. This place was none of those things. She was checking her phone for the 5th time when a change moved through the room. Subtle as a pressure shift, impossible to ignore. The other diners didn't look up. They simply adjusted, the way water adjusts around something dropped into it. He moved like the room had been arranged around him. He wasn't loud, wasn't showy. He was simply absolute. The charcoal suit was cut with a precision that stopped being clothing and became architecture. He was tall, controlled in his movements, every gesture stripped of anything unnecessary. He slid into the seat across from her without a greeting, without a smile, without any of the ordinary social machinery that people use when meeting strangers. He simply looked at her, dark eyes, completely still, the eyes of someone who looked past what people showed and straight into what they were hiding. "You're Maya," he said, not a question. His voice was low and smooth, like deep water running beneath ice. "And you're my date," she managed, the words landing smaller than she intended. He ignored the attempt entirely. His gaze moved over her. Not a leer, something more unsettling than that, an inventory. She was being catalogued, filed away. Her skin prickled. She was used to being looked at. Not like this. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "Danny said your name is Jaewon Shin, that you work in finance." A flicker moved through his expression, gone before she could name it. He leaned forward and she caught his scent. Clean, sharp cedar stripped bare by cold air. "She was half right," he said quietly. "I haven't decided yet whether tonight is a test or an insult. I don't understand. The people I do business with enjoy looking for pressure points, something to unbalance me." His eyes held hers, and the cold dismissal in them was unmistakable. "They sent you." The understanding hit her like cold water, all at once, everywhere. They had sent her. A plus-size black schoolteacher, plainly dressed, plainly out of place, who so visibly did not belong in his world that her presence at his table was the joke. She was the punchline. She had walked in here with her heart hammering and her best dress on, and she was the punchline. "So I'm an insult," she said. Her voice trembled on the last word, and she despised it. He didn't soften. He gave her the specific, brutal dignity of honesty without cruelty. "You are a message," he said, flat and final. "One I have received. You are not a person I am having dinner with." He reached into his jacket, placed several bills on the white linen between them. "For your time. You should go." Hot, furious tears pricked the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back with everything she had, refusing to let them fall in front of him. The money on the table was the worst of it. It reduced the last 10 minutes to a transaction, erased her like a line crossed out. She stood, Her hands were not quite steady. "Keep it," she whispered. She turned. 2 steps toward the door. The world detonated. The floor-to-ceiling window behind the booth exploded inward in a single violent instant, filling the air with a glittering storm of glass. The careful quiet of the dining room collapsed into screaming. Before Maya could turn, an arm like a steel band locked around her waist and yanked her backward off her feet. She hit the floor hard, pulled against a solid body, driven down behind the overturned table. Cedar and something acrid filled her senses. "Stay down." A low growl, warm breath against her temple. Silenced gunfire popped through the chaos. Maya pressed her face into his jacket lapel, eyes shut, and noticed with some detached part of her mind that his heartbeat was completely steady. He wasn't frightened, he was working. She felt the coil of muscle in his back as he assessed the room, heard the metallic click of a weapon she recognized from movies, and which sounded entirely different in real life. "We leave on my signal," he said, pulling back to look at her directly. His eyes were not cold now. They were past cold, focused to a single lethal point. "Kitchen door, straight ahead on your left. You run and you do not stop. Do you understand me, Maya?" He said her name. He said it like it had edges. "Yes," she breathed. "Go." She ran, legs clumsy beneath her, lungs burning. She hit the kitchen doors at full speed, plunging into stainless steel and heat and frightened staff, swept along with a tide of people flooding out through the service exit into the cold Chicago night. She leaned against the brick of the alley, shaking so hard. Her teeth clicked together. A black SUV screeched to a stop at the mouth of the alley. Jaewon emerged from the service exit behind her, not a hair displaced, one shoulder dusted with plaster, and crossed the alley in 4 long strides. His hand closed around her arm. "Get in the car." "No, I need to go home. Your home is not safe. No room for argument. They saw you with me. They will assume a connection. You are a loose end now." He guided her into the back seat with calm, impersonal efficiency. The door sealed shut, the locks engaged. The city slid away behind tinted glass. The safe house was a penthouse in River North. Clean lines, gunmetal surfaces, no photographs, no personal objects of any kind. It looked less like somewhere a person lived and more like somewhere a person waited. Maya sat on the edge of a sofa that cost more than her car, arms wrapped around herself, still in the burgundy dress. Jaewon stood at the window, speaking low, rapid Korean into his phone. A man in a dark suit stood motionless by the elevator. She was a prisoner. When he finally turned, jacket shed, sleeves rolled to the forearm, he looked fractionally more human. A long pale scar ran the length of his left forearm. "Who arranged the date?" he asked. "My cousin Danzi. She works events catering. She said a regular client, a mister." "Oh, asked her to find someone for an associate." His jaw tightened. "Oh," he repeated, the name landing like something dropped. He moved to the bar and poured 2 fingers of whiskey. He didn't offer her any. "Oh is not an associate. He is my rival, a man who enjoys elaborate humiliation. He staged this to make a fool of me publicly, and he used you to do it." He set the glass down. "Tonight's attack was his opening move. Now that you were seen with me, he will act on the assumption that you matter. Until he is dealt with, you stay here." Days blurred into one another. Maya read, ate meals brought by silent men in dark clothing, and stared out at a city that felt a million miles away. Jaewon came and went at unpredictable hours. Some nights she woke in the small hours to the low current of his voice somewhere in the apartment and lay still, listening to the shape of words she didn't understand, and felt, unwillingly, safer for knowing he was there. One night he returned late, and wrong. The shirt was dark on one side. The hand reaching for the glass at the bar was unsteady. "It is minor," he said flatly, turning his back to her. She was on her feet before she'd made a conscious decision. "Let me see it." The voice she used with children, pretending they weren't hurt. He turned. Something formed behind his eyes, an objection, and dissolved. He gave a single nod. She led him to the sofa. The makeshift bandage beneath his shirt was already soaked through. She worked in silence, cleaning the wound with the focused calm she used for playground injuries. No fuss, no alarm. The cut was deep but clean. Her fingers brushed an older, uglier scar near his ribs, wide and puckered, the kind left by serious violence and insufficient care. He flinched, involuntarily. "Sorry," she said quietly. A long silence. "It was a long time ago," he said finally, his voice rough in a different register. "I was careless. I believed I could protect someone." A pause that carried weight. "I was wrong." She didn't ask. The wound in the words was older and deeper than anything on his body. She finished the stitches. Her hands hadn't shaken once. When she was done, her fingers rested for just a moment on his forearm before she caught herself. He didn't pull away. He simply watched her face. And this time, for the first time since the restaurant, she felt seen rather than assessed. 3 days later, before dawn, the elevator opened hard and fast. O's people were seen near Bridgeport Elementary, one of Jaewon's men said, carefully not looking at Maya in the kitchen doorway. Asking questions. Asking about a teacher. Who she's close to. The cold moved through her from the floor upward. In the controlled chaos of orders being issued, the man by the elevator stepped away from his post. The elevator doors stood open. Maya looked at them for a long, clear moment. She could walk over right now, press lobby, disappear into the city she had lived in her entire life. She took one step, then another. She stopped. O's people were already at her school. Leaving didn't make her free. It made her findable and alone with nothing between her and whatever came next. She understood that with a cold clarity that surprised her. And then, unwanted and entirely honest, she thought about what it would mean for him. They would know she was nobody, no leverage, no connection. They would come at him harder from another angle. She turned away from the elevator. She walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and when Jaewon hung up the phone, she was already standing there waiting. He went still. He knew. She watched the recognition move through him. The precise, contained moment of understanding that she could have gone and hadn't. He crossed the room slowly and stopped close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. He lifted his hand carefully, as if not to startle her, and moved a loose lock from her cheek. His thumb rested just below her eye, a touch so gentle it stopped her breath. Not passion, something steadier than that. An acknowledgement, a reckoning. "They will not touch you," he said, his voice dropping to something low and absolute. "I will burn O's entire operation to the ground before he lays a hand on you." That was the moment she understood she was no longer simply a prisoner. The war with O escalated. One afternoon, moving her to a secondary location, the ambush hit them in a parking garage downtown. 2 vehicles boxing them in, men with weapons pouring out before the SUV had fully stopped. The driver was killed instantly. Jaewon covered her and returned fire through the shattered windshield, glass raining down around them. He was pinned. "Fire suppression system," he said, reloading with swift precision. "Manual release behind the rear seat panel. Pull it on my signal, it floods the garage. You'll have 30 seconds to reach the stairwell on your left." She found the ring with shaking fingers. Now, she pulled it. White chemical foam hissed and billowed, swallowing everything. She shoved the door open and ran, then risked one look back. He was providing cover. He was also limping. One of O's men was closing on his blind side. Maya didn't think. She grabbed the fire extinguisher mounted on the stairwell wall, turned back into the foam, and swung it with everything she had. It caught the man behind the knees. He went down hard. The opening was all Jaewon needed. One shot. Then he seized her hand and pulled her through the stairwell door, slamming it shut behind them. They collapsed onto the concrete landing, both of them breathing hard. "You came back," he said, disbelief in it. "You were hit," she panted. He looked from the wound on his leg to her face, and the thing moving through his expression was something she had never seen there before. "You should have run," he said. "You would have been clear." They stayed in the stairwell until the sounds from the garage faded. Later, in the new safe house, a clean, anonymous apartment in Logan Square, she tended his leg wound in silence. When she finished wrapping the bandage, he covered her hand with his, where it rested on his knee. "You look at me," he said quietly, his voice rough with pain and something else. "And you don't flinch. No one in my world does that." I'm too tired to flinch, she admitted, and too scared of what happens if I look away. Don't get tired, Maya. Not a request. A confession. Don't look away. It was the most honest thing he had said to her, an admission that in a world built on calculation and violence, her steady gaze had become something he held on to. The final move came 2 days later. A package was delivered to the safe house. Inside was a book she recognized instantly, a title from the rare resource shelf at Bridgeport Elementary, a shelf only she had access to. Tucked inside the cover was a photograph of Danny with a red circle drawn over her face. The message was clear. The war was no longer his alone. It was hers. The confrontation happened at an abandoned freight yard on the south side. Oh, had Danny. He wanted Maya in exchange. J1 had forbidden her from coming anywhere near it. She went anyway, using the burner phone to feed one of his younger soldiers a piece of misdirection that bought her time to get there. She was done being moved around the board. When she arrived, the scene was already set. O stood on a loading platform. Danny's beside him, with a gun at her head, crying. Jae-won and his people were positioned behind a row of shipping containers, frozen in standoff. Send her over, Shin. O called across the yard. Simple trade, or the cousin pays. Jae-won's face was stone. But Maya saw the fury behind it. Trapped, no clean move. She stepped out into the open. Every gun in the yard turned toward her. Let her go, O, she said, her voice carrying across the silence. You want me. Here I am. Maya? No. Jae-won's voice came out sharp as a whip crack. She kept her eyes on O. You think I'm his weakness, she said. You're not even close. You set up a blind date to humiliate him. Sent a fat black girl thinking it was the ultimate insult. But you don't understand him at all. He doesn't care about things like that. He cares about loyalty. And you betrayed your own blood to get where you are, he told me. It was a gamble built entirely on one overheard fragment of conversation. But it landed. Uncertainty crossed O's face. His men shifted, exchanging glances. That was the opening. Jae-won's team moved. The yard erupted. Maya dropped flat to the ground as she'd been shown. When the gunfire stopped, O was down and Danny was being rushed to safety, sobbing and alive. Jae-won came to Maya and pulled her to her feet, his hands moving quickly over her checking for injury. That was the most reckless thing you have ever done, he said. It worked, she said simply. He looked at her for a long moment, something raw and undone moving through his expression. He took her face in both hands, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. They thought you were my weakness, he said, his voice low and unsteady in a way she had never heard from him. They were wrong. He paused. You are my reason. A week later, standing at the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse, the Chicago skyline a galaxy below them, he gave her the offer. A new identity. An account with enough money to go anywhere and start anything. A clean life in whatever city she chose. A way out, freely given. She looked at him. This precise, lethal, quietly broken man who had shown her a terrifying world, and then looked at her, a third-grade teacher in a burgundy dress, and found something worth protecting. She thought about her classroom. She thought about the person she had been before the restaurant window exploded. She thought about the version of herself that had walked out of that alley and chosen to stay. Maya didn't answer him with words. She turned back to the window and the vast sweep of lights below, and after a moment he came to stand beside her. She reached out and took his hand, his fingers, scarred, strong, closed around hers. No words, no promises, just a choice made in the only language that had ever been honest between them.